after time passed to the following day, we were being kicked out of the temple. October 1867. Half a year had passed since Ito's departure. With 6 months to build, my anxiety had finally moved from mental to physical and given me a cold. Yes! We're getting this scene. I'm so happy. I was cleaning up after lunch, and as I was putting away the dishes...
おい、顔色があんまり良くねえみてえだが、風邪でもひいてんのか?
What? No. No, I'm fine.
何言ってんだよ、サノ。いつも元気な彼女が風邪なんてひくはずねえじゃねえか。なあ。
新八、風の方から裸足で逃げ出しそうなお前とこいつを一緒にすんなって。
Obnoxious idiot! Alright.
禅は俺たちで片付けておいてやるから、お前は部屋で休んだろ。
Really, I'm okay.
原田の言う通りだ。そんな熱っぽい顔してんのに雑用なんてさせられるはずねえだろ。今日はおとなしく部屋で休んどけ。わかったな。
I certainly wasn't about to argue with Hijikata-san. Nope, no arguments from him. Nuh-uh, we can't. It's forbidden. Hi, I guess I'll let you finish up. I thanked them and scurried back to my room. Normally, I rarely took ill, so I hoped my fever would go down quickly, but unfortunately, it did the opposite. Even laying down, I began to feel increasingly woozy. My father had always said that I was more resilient than most people. Surely a good long nap would cure it. But the sun went down and night came, and my fever still refused to break. I was alternately shivering and sweating, and a dull headache throbbed at the inside of my skull. After a while, I began to realize I was thirsty. Then, perhaps, the fever was finally breaking. I began to feel nauseous. But I felt something cold touch my forehead. Had one of the warriors come to check up on me? I opened my eyes and struggled to focus them on the person in front of me. It was... I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was no way he could be there. No way. Was I dreaming? I was too feverish to be sure whether what I was seeing was reality or just an illusion. A part of me worried that if I spoke, the dream would shatter and he would disappear. But I had to know. Saito-san... He didn't respond. Instead, he glared down at me. What was happening? I tried to climb up out of my bed, but...
起き上がるな。熱が上がったらどうする?
His voice was barely above a whisper, but I could hear steel in it. So, I did as I was told and dropped my head back onto my pillow. Is that really you, Saito-san?
他の誰に見えるというのだ?
He lifted the now warm towel from my forehead, submerged it in a bucket of ice water, and then carefully reapplied it.
たちの悪い風にかかったか。ひどい熱だな。
I'm fine. I just need to sleep.
己の技量を過信しすぎるなとあんたの師匠は教えなかったのか？
What?
どれほどの達人でもひとたび油断すれば自分より数段格下の相手に敗れてしまうことがある。今のあんたも同じだ。自分の体を過信するな。
I wasn't in any condition to argue, so I kept my mouth closed and pulled my blanket up a little higher. Silence hung in the chilly air. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't think of what or when. But there was something comforting about the silence, and I hadn't felt that way in a long time. I looked over at Saito-san.
なんだ？
Sorry for making you worry. I'm sorry for making you worry about me.
そのセリフは俺よりも副長や他の皆に言ってくれ。局長も副長も宗司も新八も佐野もあんたのことを心配しているはずだ。
As he spoke, he picked the warm cloth up off my forehead. Quietly and carefully, he chilled it in the water, then put it back. He still put the feelings of others before his own. Whatever else might have changed, Saito-san hadn't. It felt as if things had gone back to the way they'd been. I think this is a dream after all.
何故そう思う？
Because you left the Shinsengumi. But now you're in my room, talking about how I should worry about Hijikata-san. That can't be real, so this has to be a dream. Suddenly he looked very tired. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then shut it again. It's a nice dream. I wish you would really come back, though.
何故嬉しいのだ？あんたの言っていることはよくわからん。
Of course I'd be happy. I wanted to see you really bad. I smiled at him through my fever, but his face remained impassive. Not that I would have expected a reaction from Saito-san. In a way, it made me happy. It was just the sort of thing he'd do, and it warmed my heart.
今夜は無理をせず、ゆっくり寝ておけ。明日も熱が下がらなかったら、副長に頼んで医者を呼んでもらうといい。
But if I fall asleep now, then I'll stop dreaming, and I'll miss you. For a moment, I thought I saw him blush, but then again, this was a dream. Maybe he did blush. After a moment, he reached out one of his hands.
雪村、手を貸せ。あんたが寝つくまで手を握っていよう。少しくらいは不安が紛れるだろう。
Are you sure?
いらぬと言うならやめておくが。
No, of course I do. I worked my weak, shaking hand out from under my blankets and took his. His skin felt cool and smooth, but strong, like very fine leather. Through the fever haze, I remember the moment our hands had touched when I handed him the snow bunny I'd made. Your hand feels cool.
あんたの手が熱いせいだ。熱があるからな。
ごめんね。
別に叱ったわけではない。風邪をひくことくらい誰にでもある。何でも自分のせいだと思い込むのはあんたの悪い癖だ。
わかった。Even being admonished felt comforting and nostalgic. Aren't you worried I might give you my cold?
朝までのほんの短い時間だ。移ったりはするまい。
What does morning have to do with it, Saito? I felt relieved, but also sad. After all, it was a dream. When I woke up, Saito-san would be gone.
もう寝ろ。乱暴医の娘ならば、風邪には休養が一番だと知っているはずだろう。
I let my eyes drift closed. My fever hadn't been pleasant, but at least it had given me a nice dream to remember. I only regretted that it had been just a dream. If only... I like this trope too much! I need more of it! Give me more fever tropes! Either way, either your character is sick or your partner is sick. Give me more of these. I live by them. It may be a cliche, but they are worth it! I woke the next morning to the sound of birds chirping. My fever seemed to have broken during the night, and although my body was exhausted, I was no longer ill. I sat up slowly, and just as I'd expected, Saito-san was nowhere to be seen. Silently, I sighed. It had just been a dream. If only it could have lasted a little longer. In the corner of my room was a bucket of water, just like the one I'd seen in my dream. Saito-san had used it to cool my towel. But that couldn't be right. Could it? He's left the Shinsengumi. Surely he wouldn't risk coming back just to tend to me when I was sick. Give me more of that trope. Anyway, November! So I decided to stay home. I understand. I will stay behind. That's right. There's a chance that we may have to fight Heisuke. Would I be of any use if and when that were to happen? The more I thought about it, the more I couldn't bear to be a burden to anyone.
そうか。わかった。
After I saw everyone off, I sighed. As my breath blew white, I looked up to the sky. The moon was a full circle watching silently. They would all be going to battle. If I went, I would only be in the way. Or perhaps that was simply an excuse to allow myself to feel better for staying behind because I didn't know what to say to Heisuke. Harada and Nagakura are his best friends. If anyone can bring him back, they can. My mind occupied with worried thoughts of Heisuke and the others, I wandered around the compound and before long found myself outside. I was about to go back in when I heard footsteps running toward me. Yamazaki-san?
こんなところで何をしている？一人で出歩かないよう言われているはずだが。
Oh, sorry.
いや、今はそんなことはどうでもいい。大変な知らせが入った。時間が惜しい。広間に人を集めるから手伝ってくれ。
Serious? The main hall was noisy, even though most of the Shinsengumi was elsewhere.
掃除は休んでいるようだったから呼ばなかったよ。構わないかい？
はい、問題ありません。それより、ことは急を要します。島田君たちがまだですが、先に話しましょう。
Has something happened? I've never seen Yamazaki-san so impatient. Whatever it was that he had to say, it had to be big. He was making me nervous. I waited for Yamazaki to continue.
もしや伊藤さんの暗殺に失敗したのかい？
いえ、それ自体は成功です。我々は伊藤の死体をおとりに五両エジを油麹へとおびき寄せ包囲しました。
So few words to mark the death of a man. Yamazaki-san pressed forward, and I had no time left to feel sad.
ですがその際、長倉さんたちと五両エジ双方を包囲する形で横槍が入りました。おそらく薩摩の連中です。
Oh no. Are Nagakura Harada and Heisuke all right?
敵の数はこちらを大きく上回っていたが、おそらくあの方々ならばしばらくは持ちこたえてくれるはずだ。
早急に援軍を送らなければならないね。動ける者は私と島田君と。
Just as Inoue stood up, there was an explosion of noise from outside. What was that noise? Shocked glances were exchanged just as Shimada came through the door, distress plain on his face.
大変です。鬼が襲撃してきました。
What? Why now?
こんな時だからかもしれないね。状況を説明してくれ、島田君。襲ってきたのは例の3人組かい？
いえ、刀を持った細表の男一人です。確かあれは
刀、風間千景か。
We ran through the door, then came to a sudden halt, frozen by the scene before us. Everywhere there were bodies, and the air was thick with the stench of blood. The scent was so strong that one The scent was so strong that one not need to be a fury to be driven mad by it. Ugh.
このムクロは皆羅刹隊。これを風間が一人でやったと。
羅刹隊ということは撃って出たのは三男さんか。彼は今どこに？
あちらです。
まがいものの力など所詮はこの程度。哀れなものだな。生まれ変わって出直してくるがいい。
One of the Furies who'd leapt at Kazuma alongside Sanan-san fell to the ground with a groan.
離れ。
貴様は他の雑魚よりは多少はマシだが、所詮はまがいものの剣に過ぎぬ。
Of all the Fury Corps, Sanan-san was the only one who could even begin to stand before Kazuma's onslaught. But even he was no match for the demon. Kazuma kicked out almost casually at a charging Fury, throwing him across the yard and continued his slow walk forward.
雪村君、君は下がっていろ。あいつは我々が抑える。
But
敵は風間だけではない。いつ仲間が駆けつけてこないとも限らないからね。それに羅刹が分別をなくして襲いかかってくる降参も高い。
The two eventually nodded to one another and ran off, sword in hand.
雪村君、中に隠れていてください。風間は我々が追い払います。
Ay. Shimada ran and off. Wait, what? Shimada ran and went off to back up Sanan-san and Inoue. I didn't know why Kazuma had chosen this time to attack. But even if I faced him, I would be completely useless. What then was I to do? I'll go find Saito-san! If Inoue and the others were here, and Okita was in bed, there was still one more man unaccounted for who might be able to help. I'd only run a short distance when I collided with someone. Saito-san... No, you're... The man I'd hit was a fury, mad with bloodlust. I scrambled back just as a voice called out from the darkness behind me.
頭を下げろ!
Saito-san! As I threw myself to the ground, it occurred to me that it was slightly ironic to have been saved by the man I'd gone to find. When I turned, he was studying the fallen fury, his mouth a thin line.
羅刹隊の暴走が始まったか。厄介なことになったな。
Saito-san! Kazuma's here! Inoue's fighting him with some of the other men, but...
そうか。奴はどこにいる？
Oh, over here! My legs were shaking so bad I couldn't move. Whether it was because of the fury who'd attacked me or the thought of facing Kazuma again, or relief at seeing Saito-san, I couldn't say. He looked down at me, shivering on the floor, and his voice was cool and calm.
安心しろ。守れという命令がある限り、俺はあんたを守り抜く。たとえ何があってもだ。
My body stilted. Or stilled, not stilted, stilled. Saito-san was a man of few words, and when he did speak, it was never unnecessarily. But he had taken the time to comfort me. That meant he... Thank you.
時間がない。さっさと行くぞ。
When we returned to the battlefield, I'd left only moments ago. Kazuma was still engaged.
おのれ。
島田君、前に出るな。一人でも切られれば総崩れになる。
Sweat shone on their brows, and their chests heaved as each of them struggled for breath. Kazuma looked almost completely unfazed. He had killed countless furies, fought the standstill, and not suffered even a single scratch. Inoue!
雪村君、斉藤君を呼んできてくれたか。
怪我をした者がいれば下がれ。あとは俺が何とかする。
ほう。歯ごたえのない連中ばかりで退屈していたところだった。貴様が残っていたか。
Oh, great.
俺が来た以上好きにはさせ。などと言うつもりはないが。これでもトンショの留守を任された一人なのでな。
His body lowered into a crouch, and his hand reached for his sword. He was preparing for AI. Instead of entering a stance of his own, Kazuma looked at Saito-san for a moment, then sheathed his own sword and slowly backed away.
逃げる気か。
今日はただの時間稼ぎだ。
Great.
俺個人の用向きで来たわけではないので、長居をするつもりはない。
His eyes slid to me and he smirked.
覚えておくのだな。これがまがいものの末路だ。
His cold gaze fell on the corpses of the Furies.
血に狂い、仲間を襲う存在となり果て、それでも我ら本物にはかなうことなく、犬のように切られる運命の哀れな道化。このような輩に囲まれて暮らすなら、俺と共に来た方が幸せだと思うが。
No, I'll never do that! He flashed his teeth with a grin, then turned on his heel and melted into the darkness.
引いたようだな。無事か、雪村。
But only because you protected me.
そうか。
I couldn't shake what Kazuma had said. Scattered atop the floor were the brutally slain remains of the Furies.
井上さん、悪い知らせです。ここで対応しきれなかった羅刹が数名、屯所の中に侵入していたようです。
なんだって、中の被害はどうなっているんだい？
警備です。侵入した羅刹は切り殺されていました。誰がやった？今屯所の中には羅刹と戦えるほどのものは残っていないはずだが、沖田さんです。俺が沖田さんの部屋に入った時、無数の羅刹の死体が転がっていました。
What? But I thought Okita was too sick to fight.
だからすぐに松本先生を呼びに行くんだ。
I'll go with you. The attack on the watch, as well as the assassination of Ito-san, later became known collectively as the Aburo no Koji incident. An unexpected turn from both the demons and the Satsuma from their trap laying resulted in a number of casualties for the Shinsengumi and the watch, including Heisuke's fatal wound. In order for Heisuke to live, he had no choice but to drink the water of life. While this was all going on, Chikage Kazuma took the time to strike at the heart of our compounds. The serum brought into the Shinsengumi by my father was now slowly eating all of them away. My heart began sinking from the weight of all this.